Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In the previous video, we set up the Spring security with a database backed using JDBC User Detail Manager. It worked great, but here's the thing, it forces you to follow a very specific table structure that Spring security expects. What if you already have your own customer or user table with a different schema? That's where a custom user details service comes in. So in this video, I'll show you how to create your own custom entity, set up your Spring Data GP repository, and building a custom user detail service that loads user from your user table and wire it all up with the Spring security. So let's jump right in. First thing first, we should be required one dependency, which is Lombok, which would help us in not writing the boilerplate code for setter, getters, constructors. So let's just go to the start.spring.io. Let me just go to start.spring.io. Let's just select the Gradle Groovy and add a dependency, which is Lombok. Click on Explore, and in the bottom, you will find the Lombok dependency. You just need to copy these dependencies and jump into your IntelliJ and go to your build.gradle and add it inside your dependency. Once you add your dependency, you will find this particular icon. Just click on this and it will automatically sync your Lombok dependency. So Lombok will basically generate your getters, setters, constructor at compile time. So we don't have to write them manually when we are creating the entity or anything else. So just you need to hit refresh and Gradle project so the dependency gets pulled in. Okay, so now it is synced up. Now let's create our custom entity. We just need to go to our project and we will create a package which is known as entity. Inside this particular package, we are going to create a class which is customer that basically resemble to the table which we have created inside our MySQL database. So let's start by creating or adding the annotations of Spring Data GPU. So first thing first, to add or to create a class as an entity, we need to annotate it with @entity annotation, and that particular annotation comes from the Jakarta.persistence package. Let's just add it. Next is the @table. So @table, and we will be specifying the name of the table inside the database, which is our customer table. So JPN knows this maps to the customer table. Next, we are going to create some of the data types, which is private long ID. Next is private string email. Next, private string password. I am intentionally using different name here inside the database while we creating the table. While we creating the table, we use PWD, and here we are using the password. I am intentionally using it to give you more clarity over how we can use any other annotation to map it to the entity. Let's just create another one, which is private string role. Okay, so now to create a primary key, we are just using the @ID annotation and the another annotation which is generated value, @generated value, to handle the primary key auto generation with a strategy of generation type as an identity. Yeah. Next, I'll just focus on this particular password. So uh, you just notice that our database column is called PWD, but in Java, we are setting it as a password. So we need to add one annotation, which is column annotation. And then inside this, we will be just giving the actual name of the column, which is PWD. So this annotation handles that particular mapping. Next, we need to add or use the lombox which we have added. So we would be needing setters and the getters to setting all the property inside this custom entity. Now, let's just move to create a repository. We would be creating a new package here. I'll just name it as a repository. Next, we will be creating one repository class, which is customer repository. So this would be not class, this would be the interface. Okay. So we will annotate it as a repository. We also need to extend the JPA repository interface and provide the its implementation class or implementation entity. We need a way to query this particular table. So we'll create an method which will return an optional of your customer and which will basically return your customer detail by your email ID. So I'll just name find by email and the parameter would be string email. Let me just import optional here. So now it is perfectly fine. Now, next step would be to build a custom user detail service. So let's create a package which is service. Inside this package, I will just create a class known as bank user details service. Next, first thing first, I'll just annotate it as a service. Next, I will be creating my own user details service. And this is a custom. We need to implement user details service, and you can see I'm getting an error. Why? Because there is a method which we previously discussed, loadUserByUsername method, which we need to override. So if you can see, this particular method is coming from the user details service interface. So you just click on OK. Now, what we are going to do, first you need to focus on what exception it is throwing. So it is throwing user not found exception. So let's start implementing this user detail service interface. Let's just remove this return type and we will be creating a customer or we will be just calling the repository. So to call the repository, we would be needing a bean of the customer repository. So I'll just create private customer repository and I'll just make it as a private final customer repository. And in the modern Java, we should avoid the @autowire. Instead, we need to use the constructor injection. So I'll just use one annotation from Lombok, which is required args constructor to initialize this bean. Next, I'll just use this customer repository dot find by email, and I'll just pass the username. Next, as this will return an optional class object of customer, so I'll just use or else throw method to throw an exception if the particular user is not available inside the database by its email ID. Next, I'll just use new username not found exception, and I'll just put username or user not found with email colon plus user. I'll just close this. So now what it will return? So it will return a customer object. Okay. Let me just import it. Next, what we are going to return, because the return type of this particular method is user details. So the implementation of user detail is users class. So we need to create a or return a user dot builder dot username, which is customer dot get email dot password customer dot get password dot role, or we basically need the authorities. So this we will discuss in our upcoming lecture. For now, let's just extract the customer dot get role dot to uppercase and dot. So this will return the user details object, and the key thing is here is that Spring Security doesn't care how you load the user, as long as you return a valid user details objects. So this gives you a completability over here. Now the next step would be going to our security configuration, and if you can scroll down and see, we are still returning the JDBC user detail manager. So now remember, in the previous video we have a JDBC user detail manager being configured here. We need to remove and or comment that out. Let's just comment it. And since our user detail service is annotated with @service annotation and implements the user detail service, so Spring Security automatically detects and use it. So we don't need to explicitly define a bean of the bank user detail service. So Spring Boot auto configuration will definitely handles it. Now let's run the application and test it. Before that, I'll just add a breakpoint over the bank user detail service. I'll just add a breakpoint here, and I'll just start my application in a debug mode. Meanwhile, we can see what entries we already have set inside the customers table. And let's see our application in a running state. Let me just go to a browser. Our application is working fine. I'll just hit the first public API, which is contacts API v1 detail, and it is working fine without logging in. Let's just hit one of the secured API. So it is asking for username and password. Let's just go to the database, and you can see my email is rishabh@example.com. Let's just go to the browser and put it here. And what is my password? So my password is Rishabh@01 as 2000. Let me just add it into the password and you can sign in. So I am directly jumped into my breakpoint. So you can see there is nothing is being printed inside the console because this line is not executed right now. Let me just execute it. Okay, so Hibernate has executed a select query on the customer table where the email ID is whatever we have passed in. So if you can see, I'll just open the user. This is the user. And let me, what data we have fetched. So we have now successfully fetched our custom table data. And now what we are going to do, we are just preparing a user detail object and returning it to the further next stage. So now I think we are successfully logged in. Yes, it is working fine. Let me just log out from here. Okay, so we are now log out. Let's just use the another user, which is our Ajay. So let me just copy his email. Let me just go here and the password is something like the same. Let's copy this same and I'll just also add it here. So the password would be Ajay@01 #2000. Copy. Going to the browser, paste, sign in. So we are now again here. We executed. So we directly jump to the next step and the Hibernate query is getting triggered to fetch the data. We can go here and see all the object or data is being returned inside the customer object, and then the user detail object is getting prepared. And once I click on here, I got access denied. Why? Let's just see, because there is no as such endpoint is available. So let me just go to accounts. So yes, we are now logged in with Ajay. Let me just again log out from here. And I'll just add a wrong user, which is Rishabh or Rahul, which is not present inside my database. I'll just click on sign in. And I'll just go to the bottom. Let's just check. Okay, so the query is getting executed. Now there is a exception is thrown. So if you can see, the exception that we thrown is user not found with email Rahul. So our functionality is basically running perfectly fine, and I hope you liked our video. So let's quickly recap what we did. We added a Lombok dependency for cleaner code. We created a custom entity mapped to our own table. Then we created the custom repository with a find by email query. Then we implemented a custom user or bank user detail service. Then we basically removed the JDBC user detail manager bean. So the big takeaway here is you are not locked into the Spring Security default table structure. You can use any table, any schema, any field. Just you need to implement the user detail service that we have already did. So in the next video, we will take this further and look at how to implement custom authentication for even more control over the authentication flow. If this video helped you, smash that like button and subscribe for more Spring Security content, and drop a comment if you have any questions. I read every single one. So see you in the next video, and thank you.